There we go. Just started recording, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Andy Hood, Local 1737. With me today, I've got Sean Abbey and Bill Pollock. We'll bump off of these webcams and get into the introductions and get right into this program.
Morning.
So today we're going to do representing members. And as I said, my name is Andy Hood, Harrison Township Local 1737, Vice Chair of the Education and Training Committee. I've been local union president and vice president probably most of my career in Harrison Township, and been working with the State Union Committee, I'd say 6-7 years now, teaching classes like this and help coordinate other stuff. And with me today, I'll be organizing and kind of moderating the session today, and Sean will be the main speaker for today.
Well, good morning. My name is Sean Abbey. I'm District Vice President for the 2nd District, and I've been doing that for over 10 years. And I also chair the Education and Training Committee, which I've done for a little while. And I also serve as an IFF service rep, which all it means, all that stuff there is I do a lot of this stuff a lot of the time, a lot of representing members across the state. In my own local, I've been a member of Local 3174 in Kentwood for 25 years, and there I was on pretty much every executive board position except treasurer during my time there. So hopefully a lot of that stuff will help out today as we're moving through this course. And we also have Bill joining us.
Yep, I'm Bill Pollock, Lansing, Local 421, retired after 25 years as a battalion chief. I'm currently the education and training coordinator for the Michigan Professional Firefighters Union.
Sorry about that, a little glitch there. All right, first throughout this we do a few poll questions, and here's our first poll question for today. Have you ever participated in an MPFFU webinar? Go ahead and answer there through your cursor on the screen. I'll give everybody, I don't know, 30 seconds or here to throw an answer up.
And you can answer 2 times too, so answer the first question and then answer the bottom one if this is your first MPFFU webinar or not.
Okay, a couple more seconds here. Okay. And looks like yes, but only a couple's pretty popular. Hopefully it's a couple that we've done, and a few first-timers. That's great. Very good. Give me 1 second here to get this moving again. Okay, so a couple of our webinar ground rules here. We have a toolbar on the side. Everybody has access to it. It's to help encourage participation. You can type in chat if you need to, or if someone has a question. I'll be checking that periodically. Go ahead and raise your hand, and we can open up your microphone, and you can talk to us as well. You can type a question in. That's a little harder to get to. I can read that question for you if you're not able to have audio or anything like that. We're going to have a number of polls throughout this, so please go ahead and answer the polls. And on the right-hand side, there are handouts for this session. We have a bunch of different stuff you can download, and if you need to, we can email it to you as well. But it's a lot of the details, some of the stuff we're going to cover throughout this webinar. And we are recording this, so we're able to present it to members who couldn't participate throughout the day today. And we'll have it sent out via Facebook through the MPFFU. So here we go. We're going to launch right into a second poll question. Have you represented members before? And if not, are you in a position where you may have to? And it should be popping up right now. Go ahead and answer that for us. Looks like we got a lot of answers in here. Give me a couple seconds and we'll pop this one up here, another 5 seconds or so. Okay, and here's our answers. Yes, many times 30% of you, and 30% are new to this role. That's good. Guys and girls are recognizing that they may need to do this and are looking to get some education. A couple members, yes, only once or twice, and good, very good. So hopefully this session here will help you in that respect. And again, we'll move. Sorry, wrong way there, fellas. So we're going to throw out a legal disclaimer here, and this is something the attorney makes us do all the time. This one's going to be read word for word. So I apologize, but this webinar is intended to serve only as informal guidance on the matters addressed. You should not be relied upon as legal advice. Anyone using this webinar or information provided in the associated training program should rely on his or her own independent judgment or, as appropriate, seek advice of competent professional in determining the exercise of reasonable care in any given circumstance. The MPFFU disclaims liability for any injury or other damages of any nature whatsoever, directly or indirectly, resulting from the use of or reliance on this webinar or the associated training program. And it's a pretty important point there. If we have members that there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover in here that could get the local in a lot of trouble, so we need to make sure that if you come into a problem and you're unsure about it, talk to your district vice president, talk to other local presidents, or even and legal counsel, importantly, as well. And some of the objectives we're going to go over, we're going to discuss the roles and responsibilities representing members, how to provide representation, duty of fair representation. That's an important one. We don't typically see a lot of DFR claims, but the potential is always there. Processing grievances, local autonomy, how every local is different, and the different things you can do. And what should union rep be doing? What should union rep be doing? You can use your chat box to toss in any answers or questions you have for that.
And Andy, James looks like he's got his hand up. I don't know if you wanna...
Let me take a look here. Questions?
So yeah, just real quick, when you think about a representative, a union rep, just put in your chat box real quick, or just type in there in your question, either place. Just a quick word, what do you think a union rep should be doing?
Yep, I see James there. I'm gonna turn your microphone on, James, if you got a question. Ready?
There, James?
Maybe not. Go ahead and try to type a chat or something, James, and or send a question out for that.
All right, so let's move on to the next slide, and we'll keep going here. So what should you be doing?
Give me 1 second here, Sean.
Okay.
Yeah, a little technical difficulty here with getting in and out of the chat questions and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here we go.
Well, big time. The main thing you should be doing is you're the first line of communications. So as you're representing your members, you should be the first line of communication up and down. So you're getting stuff from admin, you're getting stuff from your members, and really you kind of need to be a good communication piece between those. Representation, that's obviously key. We're going to be representing them, and we're going to be talking a lot about these as we go through the program today. Doing grievance processing. You need to make sure you're attending meetings so you're informed and know what's going on. That includes your own local meetings, maybe meetings at City Hall, or district meetings, IFF and MPFFU meetings, things like that. Also, rally your members. This is a big one that I think we don't do a good enough job with, as all of us, myself included, is making sure we're rallying our members. We become lost in emails and texts and everything else, and I think our age of communication has become an age of over communication, and when people are getting 100 emails a day, it's really easy to lose your one that says, hey, we need you to show up in Lansing today. So it's important to have that personal contact. I always tell people, it's like, if you want to get a trade at work, do you just email blast your whole department, or do you reach out to those people you can really count on to help you out? Same thing for anything else you do. When you're rallying your members, you need to reach out to those people that will be there and get them to come. Help organize events, so whether it be MDA Fill the Boot or some kind of a rally or some kind of a march. That's kind of what needs to happen. You're the first line of defense, so if you see stuff happening around, you need to be there and make sure you are representing the members in your contract. And make sure you're organized and educated. We're talking a lot about that as we go.
And one of those things that Sean mentioned, first line of communication, that's really important. If you need, as a local union president or representative, you need to be making sure that your members are coming to you. However, you need to do that. It's a lot more difficult for a union to function correctly if your members have a question about the contract and go to seek management's opinion, not the union's opinion.
Perfect. Make sure you're educated. So there's tons of external classes and internal classes, and internal leaders. So if there's classes out like this one, webinars, there's all kinds. The state's putting out trainings. We've got a great opportunity coming up in May. I believe it's the 22nd and 23rd. Is that right, Andy?
That's right. Yep.
Of May. It's going to be down in Novi, which is going to have some good tracks. There's also IFF has lots of trainings, and that's an IFF training, as well as we have our own IFF 8th District PEP event every year in October, November-ish down in Indy. I think we're going to continue those, as well as lots of other opportunities. So internal leaders, find other people, bounce stuff off internal leaders and external leaders. You got a lot of people around you. For example, in my district, a lot of my local leaders contact me with questions and things like that, and there's very few problems that have never happened before. Most things that happen have happened somewhere else. So you got someone with some experience out there somewhere. We just need to find them and find out what they did and what their outcome was, and how best to deal with situations. So there's tons of resources out there for you. Just know where those are at, and just go up the chain. You can start with your state VP. You've got legal. You got your own legal. The state has a legal as well. Michael Herons, our legal counsel, as well as IFF has a whole legal team. The IFF, as far as I'm concerned, is one of our most underused resources that we pay the freight for. Every check is IFF. They have tons of people there that can help you with almost anything. So you got a lot of help out there. Just reach out and get it.
Yeah, Sean hit the nail on the head with the IAFF being underutilized. My local had an issue arise with FLSA calculation. My township decided to change how they're going to calculate FLSA and paid overtime. So I emailed Paul Huffnagel, who was a DVP at the time, and within minutes of me sending the email, my phone rang. It was Paul. Talked to me for about 10 minutes about what the problem was, and he says, all right, I understand. I'm going to put you in touch with legal counsel for the IAFF. Within 5 minutes, I had an email back from them. We scheduled a time to talk, and I bet you they committed probably 20 hours between emails and conversations with me working on one FLSA issue for a small local. But the IAFF is there and has those resources available.
All right, these next few slides I want to just kind of fly through because I really want to get to the meat and potatoes of today, which is the representative. But you need to be organized, and whether you do it paper or digital, we'll talk about paper here for a quick second. It still works. It keeps you organized. You have copies of everything, but you need to update that stuff. You need to file it. A good idea might be to scan it so you do have electronically down the road, and then you might have to shred it depending on what it has to pertain to. Keep in mind with paper stuff, if you're around the station, you catch a run, and it's all done in paper, that's very hard to secure. It's laying there. Whereas if it's on your computer or something like that, you can lock it up, and so people can't get to it quite as easily. So they still work. So if that's the way you do it, make sure that's kind of got that all taken care of. But then also electronically, it's got obviously the way things are going, get with the times here. It's at your fingertips. You can scan stuff a lot of times, so you can scan for information very easily. You can store tons of stuff in a small area. So a lot of times, I know our union where we kept all of our stuff, we had file cabinets and file cabinets of paperwork and things like that, and really we don't have that anymore. Everything's done electronically, and we scan everything and shred it, and it's all kind of right there. So it's a lot more effective and more secure.
And even more accessible too. You know, if your local decides to put everything on a Dropbox account or a Google Drive account, you can access it from any device you have. So you know, say you forget your computer, you can pull it up on your cell phone and you know look at grievance process and check timelines and things like that. So.
Yep, awesome. So make sure that your representatives have what they need. They have the resources and tools right up front. You don't want to wait until after things are happening to be like, oh, you know what, this guy's getting called to be a rep and he doesn't have a copy of the contract. He doesn't know what our bylaws and all that kind of stuff. This guy's getting written up on a part of the city handbook, but he doesn't even have a copy of that. He needs to start a grievance, but he doesn't have a form. That's not the time to do that. This should be already in every person has a potential to represent a member. Should have all of this stuff with them. Should have CBA rules and regs. I'll let you read down the list. On the big one there, you know, the Garrity form, and we've got those at the state website. And I think there's one in your handouts. I can't remember. Let me check. But yeah, there's a Garrity form in your handouts, so make sure your handouts are on the right there, so make sure you download those during the course here. And know what your members' rights are, and we'll talk about those as we go forward. Really, they should have all that stuff with them. Any other ideas, Andy, or anything else you can think of?
No, I think this covers it pretty well, you know. Probably some of the more important things is no paper and pens. If you get called into an emergency disciplinary meeting, you need to be able to take notes and because, you know, going through this process, representing a member, you could lose a lot of thought if you have a half-hour meeting.
Perfect. All right. The big thing about representation is everyone, absolutely everyone, receives fair and equitable representation, no matter what. You know, if you kind of just live by that mantra when you're representing anybody, you know, you're good to go. That's going to take care of probably 95% of your problems that could arise. What happens is if you're not fair and equitable, you start having issues and run into other DFR type situations and things like that. Let's keep going here.
Poll question 3 is.
Do you want me to launch it?
Yeah, can you launch it, Sean? Is all information exchanged between a MPFF or between a union representative and a member considered private and privileged? Okay, everyone should have that poll up on their screen there.
Almost there, just get a couple more seconds. All
right, you got the answers there, Sean? There you go.
Yeah, so should be posted. It's 75% are yes, and it's no. It could be used against a member. There's no such thing. We'll move on to the next slide here. There's no such thing as attorney-client privilege, if you will, between a union rep and the member. So, for example, if you are, let's say, a member got accused of stealing money from the petty cash, and he comes to you and says, "Yeah, you know what? I stole a bunch of money from the petty cash," and the local firehouse guy that can't stand you happens to overhear that, you know, he could go to trial, and this thing goes to trial. It could actually be called, and you could be forced to testify against your own member. So keep that in mind. Just advise when you're discussing issues that there's no privilege, that you could be called to testify against your very own member. I see there's a hand up too. Let me get to this real quick. Dave, I'm going to turn you on here for a second. Oops, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Go ahead, Dave. I'm going to turn your mic on. You got a question? David, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
There we go.
I don't have a question, though. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought your hand was up, so I didn't know. Okay. I'll turn you off there.
Yeah, the most important thing to remember out of this is that, just like Sean said, there's no union representative member privilege. If he tells you something, you can be forced to testify as to what he said, he or she said. So some of the rights that members have, Weingarten rights, came out of National Labor Relations Board case in 1977. And this case gives a right to union members to have representation when members getting question-related discipline. We do have a different webinar we do specific towards Weingarten rights.
Yeah, and that's the big thing here. We're going to fly through these member rights. There's entire webinars on all this stuff. So when we cut this class up to make this one an hour, we can't possibly go through this. The big thing to get out of this is advise your members they have a right to have a union representative present. Management can't select the rep. It's up to the member. And the representative is an active participant. So if you're representing a member, you can be an active participant. You can ask questions. You can ask clarifying questions. If it doesn't make sense, if the chief's asking what happened during that shift or whatever, you can, I mean, how's he supposed to recall what happened in the entire shift? Or anything else that just doesn't make sense. You're there to be an active participant. You're not just there to sit there like a rock. And remember, when you're repping a member, you're an equal. So I know you might be a 6-year firefighter, but when you're with the chief, you're in equal ground. You're representing the member in the local, and you're on equal ground with the chief.
And that one's something hard that sometimes people don't get. A lot of times you'll get a fire chief who's trying to be threatening and intimidated, but and it's sometimes difficult to stand your ground and make them understand that they're equal, that you're equals in that situation, but you are.
One of the tough issues to deal with, a little outside the box and something to think about, is when you have members that have issues against other members. They can get very ugly, and remember, each one should have their very own rep. You never want to have one rep for both members, because it really kind of makes it muddy. You really want to assign a separate rep to each person. That way they've got their own rep, dealing with their issues, and they can kind of come together. This does happen quite often. You may have one member have an issue with another member, and it can get ugly with between the two of them. So I'll make sure to do that. The other issue is a lot of times, like, a person might be like, oh, I used to be the president. I don't need a union rep. I know what I'm doing, or I'm a past union leader or whatever. Everyone should get a rep, because it's not about who you are, knowing the process or whatever. It's about the local being represented there, because the local is representing not only that member but the contract. You don't want some past president who might kind of know how things are going and go in there and cut some deal to try to to get out of something or do something different or whatever, when that's not really the way it should happen. It should be fair and equitable for everybody. So if a member that's never been on the e-board gets a rep, then a member that has been on the e-board should get a rep. And really just comes down to just being equal and fair. And even that third party thing, a lot of times, it's just nice having that extra set of ears in there, so you don't get into a he said, she said type thing. Everyone knows what's going on.
So we'll touch on duty of fair representation. A breach of the statutory duty of fair representation occurs only when a union's conduct towards a member of the collective bargaining unit is arbitrary, discriminatory, or in bad faith. And this is a U.S. Supreme Court decision that gives us this test for duty of fair representation. And again, we got a webinar that covers both Weingarten, DFR, Garrity in much greater detail. But understand, the most important part of this is understand when you're doing your job as a union representative, it cannot be arbitrary, discriminatory, or in bad faith. Those are the three key terms that come out of this.
Yeah, check out that webinar, guys. It's really good. It's recorded right now. There's a recorded version that's on the state website, so check that out. And I'm sure we'll be doing another live one here soon. But DFR, and again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but they're devastating. There's a lot of locals across the state that have actually paid more money fighting DFR cases against members that have been treated unfairly than by management. And you're really putting yourself and your local at risk if you are being arbitrary or discriminatory or acting in bad faith. You both can be sued. They can come after you as well. We've had union officials named in cases. And it's as simple as this: be fair, don't discriminate, follow the rules, make sure everybody knows the rules, and then never do anything alone. If you're starting to make decisions alone, you're just asking to get in trouble. So make sure you have some kind of process in place that includes more than one person. And again, you can spend a lot more time on that in that DFR area. Questions. We're going to take some breaks as we go through the webinar to actually answer some questions if you have anything so far. I'm just going to raise your hand real quick and we'll turn your mic on if anyone has any questions so far on the program. Everybody looking good? All right. Terrific.
Very good.
Let's keep going.
So grievance processing, what constitutes a valid grievance? And this is sometimes a very subjective term that people say, hey, I've got this grievance, and recite you something that that you say is just, no, you're just arguing with another guy or girl in the department or your local or whatever. That's not a grievance. A grievance comes down to a couple very specific things.
So just real quick, anybody want to raise your hand? What's the difference between is it a grievance or a gripe? So anybody want to raise your hand and give a quick example of a difference between a grievance and a gripe and that you've dealt with in your local? Anyone? Don't be afraid.
Well, here we can toss out our interpretation of grievance versus gripe.
There you go. A grievance and a gripe, you got them on the left and right there. On the left, a clear grievance is going to be a violation of CBA, of law, of agency regulations, a violation of a health or safety standard, something that's directly written that you can actually point to and say, my employer is violating this, and according to our contract, they're supposed to be doing this, and they're not doing it. A gripe is going to be, no, there's no violation. It's a lot of times it can be a dispute between workers, personality conflict, a simple complaint. I use the example like, you've always washed up everything at 9 o'clock at night every night, and then one night everybody's like, oh, we're going to wash them at 8 o'clock tonight, and you're like, oh, the Red Wings game's on, I want to file a grievance because we're not supposed to wash until 9. Well, it's not really in the contract. That's just a kind of a grape thing. So anyway, so just keep that in mind. When you're dealing with members, make sure they should be able to point to a grievance. And ask them that. Say, okay, you think you have a grievance, show me where you're being grieved. Literally all those things on the left should be something they should be able to point to language of some sort and show you this is why it's a grievance. And you can help them out in that too. I'm not saying, if you know it's a grievance, you can help them through the process because they might not know where that's at in the contract. They might say, hey, you know what, I didn't get paid for holiday last week and I'm pretty sure, we get paid for New Year's Day. Well, yeah, that's pretty clear. You can go to the contract, show it, and it's pretty easy, slam dunk. But make them point that out and help them make you do some of the work. And remember, too, never just dismiss stuff at ground level. If it's something more than what I talked about earlier as a gripe, and there could be potential grievance, make sure you get some help on it. If you're not sure, have that process in place in your local. A grievance committee or the e-board or whoever is dealing with that, and that should be the group that decides whether it is a grievance or not, and process it through. If you just dismiss it, because here's what happens. The same person comes to you, once a week with a grievance, and 95% of them, you know what, that 5% of the time he's going to come to you, and it's going to be a real grievance, and you're not even going to have your brain turned on because you're like, you know what, this guy, all he does is complain about everything, and this is not a grievance. And now all of a sudden he comes to you and it is one. Now you're going to be put in a bad spot because now he's going to come after you potentially or the local for not representing you properly with a DFR or whatever. All right.
So CBA violation.
So yeah, wages, hours, and these are easy to point to. Wages, hours, working conditions, anything in your contract, very easy to go through. Big ones, a lot of times we see them with those ones at the bottom. Stuff like discipline and promotions. Those are probably the ones at the top. You don't really get those a lot unless they're not figuring stuff out properly. But in general, that's the way it is. We see some healthcare stuff now because the way they're figuring out healthcare, sometimes it's not done properly. I just had a local in my district that they're trying to make unilateral changes mid-contract with healthcare, so they file a grievance, stuff like that. But a lot of times those bottom two are pretty big, like they want to promote on their own instead of following the contract, or discipline however they want versus what the contract reads. So those are kind of some of the big ones. So.
Yeah, and even along with the discipline, like a past practice, if a certain infraction over time has been warranted to be a verbal reprimand, and the management has an issue with one employee and says, all right, well, I know over the past this has always been a verbal, because I don't like you, it's now a written or time off. That could be a violation too as well. Discipline has to be fair for everybody as well. And there we go, right into violation of past practice. Past practice is something that's been in place for an extended period of time and is accepted both by management and the union. And this can be explicit, verbally or in writing, or implicit, meaning that it's occurred and neither side has objected. If management decides to try to change a past practice, over time, these practices become basically incorporated into the contract, even though they're not written there on the implicit side. So if your practice is we have coffee at 9:30 every morning, we get our vehicles checked out, plan the day, and we sit down from 9:30 to 10 o'clock and have coffee. And managements came in there and sat down, had a cup of coffee, and this has been an ongoing process. And all of a sudden they get some sort of issue, and say, you know what, you guys need to get up at 9:30 and go mop the floors. Well, you may potentially have a past practice grievance if it rises to the level that it's been an accepted practice throughout time.
And again, a lot of those things, if it's something that has been past practice for, like, let's say, for example, this kind of happens in my local even. Let's say they've always done they've sent all your uniforms out to cleaners, so you get cleaning service, but it's not in the contract, and it's been in there, and they've always done it. That might be something on one of those contracts. It might be an easy one to throw in there and say, you know what, we really like having our uniforms clean. You've always done it. Let's just put it in the contract. That way we know it's always, you've done it for 20 years. Let's just put it in the contract. So sometimes put some of those things in there if you can, and they're really easy gets because you can tell them that you've always done it. So it's, it's, if you stopped, we would file a unfair labor, or a past practice grievance against you. So let's just stay away from that. Violations of fair treatment, any of the protected classes, and union activity. PARA gives you right to have union activity. So, for example, if any of you today are in your station listening to this, there's some states where you would be fired for doing this, and so your union activity is protected. So if they try to come after you for your union activity, that can be a grievance or a ULP.
Violations of state or federal laws could or standards could lead to a grievance. FLSA, hours of work. 53 hours is our threshold per week in a 28-day period for overtime. Some places have just overtime for any extra hours worked. So if you work 212 hours, take 2 days off and work 1 extra day, they pay you overtime. Well, that's okay. But if they decide that, you know what, we're going to move the threshold of when we pay overtime from 212 up to 240 hours, well, then there's a grievance based on FLSA violation. MIOSHA Part 74 is what gives us our safety standards in the fire service. A grievance can be filed on violations of safety standards. PARA, right to union activity, like Sean was talking about before. A lot of places even have in their contracts that they can hold meetings on township, city, whatever municipality property, or even have rights to have offices there. But at least right now in Michigan, PARA gives us some pretty powerful rights to protected union activities in the state. NFPA 1500, health and safety issues. A lot of those issues can be grieved as well.
And again, a lot of times that's only if it's incorporated somehow, because that's a standard, not a right. But management has its own rules, so they put rules and things out. And if they're not following their own rules, they're going to punish you if you don't follow their rules, so you can grieve if they don't follow their own rules. So make sure they're following their own rules, policies, and procedures, and they're doing what they're supposed to. And always remember that your contract's going to supersede any of their own rules and regs or city manual or anything like that. Your contract's a legal document that's going to supersede any and all other things, except for obviously actual law. So it's kind of your own thing, your own set of rules, and it's going to be the main thing you're going to go to. So if they have something, for example, let's say in your city handbook that conflicts with your contract's always going to prevail.
So here comes the hard part. Now what? You've got a grievance. So what we recommend is every local has a process on how to file a grievance, how to document, how to file, and the steps, and also include in there your timelines. Every process is different, but we can get into some of the details here, right? Some grievances may never be filed. If management calls in a member for an investigation and they ask for union representation, the union rep shows up, they conduct this investigation and find out there's no violation, well, there's no need to file a grievance. There was no negative action by management. If the aggrieved party is satisfied with the explanation. And, this could be many different things. This could be a work dispute or personality conflict. Someone gets called in because someone lost their temper, and it's going to be an insubordination issue. And then the aggrieved party, say the lieutenant, gets the explanation that, yeah, this guy he's got a brand new baby, he was up all night, he lost his temper, he apologized, and that may be enough to satisfy that engine company lieutenant that, okay, no problem, I understand that, that's okay. Management may change their position on some issues. Sometimes management realizes that the fight they're about to take on isn't worth the outcome they're hoping to get, and they might maybe back down at that point. Union discovers a previous agreement or settlement. This is going back to keeping good records. This is critically important. My local, personally, we had an issue where we'd send guys off to physicals, and they do it on duty. So we'd send half of our personnel on a daily basis during physical time out of the community, out of service, to have their physicals done. So the local filed a grievance at the time. Management didn't get too far in the process. Management agreed, all right, no problem. When we have physicals, we'll fill overtime for those members that are off getting their physicals. Well, lo and behold, management's changed, and the new fire chief says, no, I'm never going to pay that. That's not okay. Well, we brought out the old grievance and settlement where management agreed that they were going to pay it, and in that case, we didn't even have to file a grievance a second time. Said, all right, that's our agreement. And then has there been a precedent? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Andy, that's key too, because a lot of times, that's a great example of, we have a lot better historical knowledge of what's going on in the cities than most of the people at the city. I mean, city managers, mayors, fire chiefs, HR directors, all those type of people. I mean, just think in your own local, if you've been there for any extended amount of time, how many you've gone through. I mean, I'm sure in your career you've gone through multiple of all those positions. So they're not going to have any historical knowledge about what's going on, like Andy talked about. But most of us do. But it's key that we know it and we use it, because if you don't know what's going on, if Andy didn't know that they had that agreement out, now you're going to cost the local even more money, and who knows, maybe this time you don't get the same result. It's a different arbitrator or a different outcome or whatever, and now you're screwed. So make sure you keep track of all that stuff.
And last, has there been a precedent? Oh, you got a question, Sean?
Yes, it says, some of our members who have had lengthy personality conflicts want the union to file safety grievances against each other for questionable tactics on the fire ground. I was under the impression that it's not our job to pursue discipline against our own members. The safety grievance approach seems like a gray area. Yeah. Any suggestions? Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. And I mean, the grievance part of that would be hard, just because, like you said, you actually can point to something specific. But safety is part. You can always negotiate safety and talk about safety and things like that. And if you are having members making questionable decisions, I think that's more just a conversation. The issue there too is personalities and tactics. You know what I mean? That person might say, "Oh, I thought that was, what's safe to one person is not safe to another." So I guess one thing is what standards they're using or what training they're using or whatever. But that almost sounds like you just need to have some conversations more than a grievance. But I mean, and that kind of gets through too to the question, is that could be one of those member things, which is kind of tight, which can be tough. And but a grievance, you got to actually ask what it comes back to, what is a grievance? Have them point, what do you want to grieve? Because personalities or safety issues on a scene, if they're crazy, like safety, gets a firefighter killed, then obviously you need to have some conversations with your chief as a union just on overall safety, not necessarily through a grievance, but just that's what the union's there for, to keep their members safe. But if it's just some personality dispute, I don't like the way this guy does it, or whatever, let's face it, our job's not safe, You know, I've got some members in my local that, you know, if we went into a fire, they might think that that's unsafe because, you know, they're safety guys. You know, they want to make sure everything's safe. And then other guys, you know, if you could send them into a fully involved house and they wouldn't care. So it just depends.
Yeah, absolutely. That can be very subjective.
Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but okay, let's keep going. We gotta get through some stuff. We got about 20 minutes, so we want to get through there. So know when to file. Make sure you file your CBA timelines. There's a form in your handouts. A form is great to have, and in your form, take that form and adapt it to your CBA and your Constitution and bylaws. So, and really, your Constitution and bylaws and your CBA should really go together. You know, dovetail together how that operates. So, in your contract, you should reference who does the grievances, and in your Constitution and bylaws, it should reference the same thing. And then your timeline should be in there, and in that form, document the timeline. So if it says you have 5 days to file a grievance, you know, the first thing in the top of that form should be the date of the alleged grievance, the alleged grievable act should be right at the top, and then 5 days from that should be there. But remember, your days are going to be different based on your contract. Some people don't include weekends. Some people do. Some people don't include holidays. Some people do. So you really want to make sure when you're counting those days that you know what they are. So if you only use work days, or, you know, for City Hall people, you know, it happens today, and we got 5 days to file. So today's Wednesday, so then you go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday doesn't count, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it's Wednesday of next week is, you know, we got to file by then. So that date should be on there. If you and again, that's going to give you some time to investigate. If you do not have time to investigate, either just file it and say, hey, we're still investigating, but we want to file this, or try to get an extension. If you're doing an extension, make sure it's in writing. But keep in mind that goes both ways too. You know, if you're asking for leeway on contract wording, they might ask for leeway another time. You know, let's say one of the timelines, they're having their attorney review things and they want an extension. Well, if you're not going to grant them an extension for their attorney, they might not grant you an extension next time to turn it in. So, you know, try to work with them and work that out. You can always withdraw. A lot of people are like, oh, why should I, if we withdraw, that makes us look weak. Well, you know, what makes you look weak is losing. So if you've done some investigation and you found out that that's a losing grievance, then that's weak. So you can always withdraw it without due prejudice, saying that, hey, we didn't know what all the facts are. We don't want to take this because there's no even, you don't even have to give an excuse. It just, you know, other facts may have come up to make you want to withdraw that. It could be cost thing. And keep in mind, we talk about that a lot in the representation thing and DFR and all that. It could be a cost is a valid issue. You know, if it's going to cost one member $1 forever, then maybe you're just like, hey, here's your $1, dude. We're not going to fight this because it's never going to happen again. They said they're not going to do it again. We've got writing that says they're not going to do it again. They're just not going to pay you your $1. But if it's something that's going to cost $1 for every member, every paycheck forever, then obviously that's, you know, you want to keep going. I always liked to, whenever I had a grievance that I was pursuing, I always liked having the paperwork already done and in my hand when I had the first meeting. So like Andy talked about a little bit ago, you might never have to file that grievance, but I always liked having it in my hand because they knew that in that meeting, if we didn't come to an agreement or something happened that I liked, that I was going to file the grievance right then. So that's kind of a nice trick to do, and not even a trick, just kind of a nice thing to do is make sure you have that already done. So you're like, okay, Chief, we can't come to an agreement on this. Obviously, you're not saying, oh, I want to start a grievance. Here's the form. I want to really quickly go through this. Make sure when you're writing a grievance, you want to know what member, group of members. It could be the whole local. What happened or failed to happen, and why is this a grievance? What article is being filed against, or what article are you referencing? And remember, you can always put inter alia or all other relevant articles of the CBA, because let's say it's a pay issue. Let's say the guy went to some training and didn't get paid overtime for it properly, whatever. But there might be another part of your contract that says, you know, your vacation time or your sick time, whatever, or your longevity is based on your, you know, your pay. Maybe those need to get credited as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. You might be looking at one thing, but it could affect other parts of the CBA as well. And then exact precise times and dates when things happen. And the big thing is the relief. What do you want? We want them to correct the situation, don't do it again, and we also want to be made whole. And be made whole is nice because you can put in there, we want, you know, his sick time back, his it's payback, and we want the employee to be made whole. So maybe it's lost time, maybe it's whatever, but at the end of the day, we just want it to be like nothing ever happened. And that could be like, let's say they demoted a person and you grieved it and got his promotion back. You know, that's a big thing. You know, there's a lot to that about being made whole. Not only getting all the stuff back, whatever, but there's a lot of pay and lost time and things like that that can be affected.
So every local needs to have a grievance action plan, right? Start a file whenever there's a potential grievance or potential grievance, and whether you do that via paper or computer. Obviously, we're stressing computer here, but part of this grievance action plan is develop this, right? Start a grievance fact sheet. This could be something that your union representative has, where he just takes notes and meeting with the person that's grieved. He takes the notes, gets written statements. This is somewhere where you can collect and write down evidence and pertinent documents and all these things. And as well, part of this process, you know, the grievant is going to offer their version of what happened and why it's a grievance. You need to have good communication with that grievant, because if you take their case and take down all this information and talk to them and they don't hear from you for 2 weeks, it's going to leave a negative impact on them. So start your file, start getting your documents, get everything together, and make sure you're communicating with the person who filed the grievance. Hey, this is where we're at. We've got written statements. We're still collecting evidence. It could be another week or whatever the situation might be.
That's a great way to keep any other issues in check. The biggest thing members don't like is not being told what's going on. And remember, the more quality you put into this process, this investigation, and this action plan, the more money you can save your local down the road. Because if this goes into arbitration, it could be 6 months, a year later, your attorney is going to say, I need this, I need this, I need this. And if you don't have that for them, they're going to do it, and it's going to cost you a lot more money.
Yeah, it's much easier for you get to the point where 6 months down the road you have to file for arbitration and the attorney says, all right, send me everything you got. If you can send them off one computer file with 2 pages of notes, 10 written statements, the evidence, various articles of the contract or rules that were violated and everything else, it's going to make their job a lot more quick, which is in turn going to reduce your costs as well.
All right, make sure you have the action plan as part of building a case. This is going to be a court case, basically, is what comes down to. An arbitration is, a grievance arbitration is exactly like a court case. You want to be professional. You always want to look and act the part, because again, you know, you're representing that member, so you don't want you don't instill a lot of confidence when you walk in in cutoff shorts and a tank top to a meeting with your member and the chief. So make sure you're organized. I tell you what, when I go into meetings, I always laugh because a lot of attorneys I deal with, they look totally unorganized, and when everything's everywhere, and I always kind of grin a little bit and think in the back of my head, it's like, man, this is really good for us, because you always want to be more organized than they are. So make sure you're organized, follow your procedure, know what that is, and then seek support when needed. Make sure you understand that, you know, you might not be able to do everything on your own. So use those internal contacts that you might have, and those external, and your counsel as well. Keep everybody in the loop.
So in touching with Sean's being organized and look the part, we did this with contract negotiations, but if you have a significant grievance that is going to involve a lot of meetings, this could be something you do as well. We bought a laptop computer and a cheap scanner printer, so when we sat down, you could sit down, you could be printing off documents, you could deal with making your settlement agreement right there on the table, printing it off, and both parties sign. So even having those couple little items there might speed the process along as well. So part of your grievance.
And then make sure it's a.
Oh, go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
Make sure you're doing a thorough investigation. Make sure you're doing interviews with the members, supervisors, witnesses, things like that. And make sure you get complete notes and timelines of everything that happened and what led up to events, things like that. Again, that's where you're really going to find a lot of your background information to support the case or find out what exactly happened. And ask those 5 W's: who's the aggrieved, what happened or didn't happen, when it took place, where the event occurred, and why is this a grievance, and then how this can be remedied. And really, if you go down that grievance investigation just like that, just like you would anything else, you really are going to answer all the questions, and you're going to be able to cross your T's and dot your I's and get that thing handled.
Yeah, it's important to have a process to go through in investigating a grievance. If you go in there haphazardly, you're going to miss steps, you're going to miss information and stuff that's pertinent. So, following something, procedure like this, or it could be very beneficial for you.
And remember now too, when you're investigating a lot of this stuff, and it talks about this, is there's so much stuff out there: cameras, phones, check. Like my station, we've got card access to get in. There's cameras around the premises for security. There's stuff. So I mean, there's make sure you've got all the data and you get that from them. If they're trying to accuse somebody's showing up late to work for 10 shifts in a row or something like that, and they're using that stuff, make sure it's set up right. Make sure those times are right on there. Make sure everything's done. Make sure you get those records as well. So obtain any evidence you need to, any written information, get you information what they're using, and ensure that the member is aware that all this is public. Everything's public. So keep that in mind too, guys. When you're doing any investigations, and let your members know too, the other side's doing these same investigations. And anything that's said, anything that's given, anything that's written, it's not private. So the chief might say, it's just between you and me. I just want to know what you think of this guy. Is he a good officer or not? We're thinking about demoting him. And then this guy goes off and writes a 10-page rant on how this guy's the worst officer ever. I've been in arbitration hearings, grievance arbitration hearings, and that member has had to read that 10-page rant about that person 5 feet away. Not comfortable, not cool. So keep that in mind. Make sure everybody knows that all this stuff's public. It's going to all come out, and if this thing goes to arbitration, it's all going to be read, and those statements are going to be given.
And another thing to remember, requesting any written information from management, that could even be meeting notes. We've FOIA'd or para-requested meeting notes from meetings that management has had with individual employees. And our fire chief gets done with a meeting with someone, he sits down on his computer and he types up his notes. So there may be pertinent data there that management can offer you too through their meeting notes if they take them.
How are we going to proceed? Make sure you look at all the evidence, and we're going to determine how that grievance should be processed, how it should be filed, and if it's going to eventually be arbitrated. You can make a lot of these decisions based on your process, and again, consult with that DFR course. That'll help you a lot with some of those decisions. Make sure you have an e-board or the grievance committee or somebody is making that decision of how this thing's going. It should never be one person saying, oh, yep, this is what I think's happening. Nope, it's not a grievance, or yep, we're taking it all the way, or whatever. You should have some kind of appeal process in place as well. For example, in my local, we've got a grievance committee that's headed by a vice president and 2 stewards. If let's say they deny the thing going forward, that member can then appeal that grievance to the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. So the other 3 members of the e-board. So it's nice to have an appeal process in place, because just in case, say 2 of those 3 people on that group the first group, just don't like that guy. It should never be about personalities, but sometimes that does happen. But there's at least an appeal process to get around that. Try not to do meetings. It depends on the size of your local. Some locals might only have 6 people in their local, and that might be a good number to deal with it. But I've seen way too many times when locals have 30 people in their local, let's say, and they're in a meeting, and it turns into, that guy's never done anything for this local. Oh, I wish we, those kind of conversations should not happen. And it's hard to control those types of conversations when you have a large group like that. You almost get like the mob thing going. You don't want that. This should be about the facts of this case, and if we should represent this member. Because remember, that you might not like this member at all, or you might think he's worthless, but this potential grievance could affect everybody. So next time you do this, or it could affect you. So it should never be personal. It should never be about what that person's done. It should only be about the present case. And a lot of times I've seen those meeting situations, it just turns into that. And the other bad thing about that is a lot of times that member's there. So he's jotting notes down about how, oh, they're not going to take this because they said I don't work hard enough, and they think that I don't do a good job, and I don't show up to union meetings, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, he shows that to an attorney, that's a DFR all day long, because that has no bearing on the case. So I'd really try to keep it into smaller meetings where you can have thoughtful, meaningful conversation, and you don't get that, all the BS that you really don't need.
And Sean touched on a very important point there. Having an appeals process can help keep you out of a DFR claim. If you have a grievance committee that initially established contact, reviewed the data, everything that went with this grievance, and said, look, there's no violation here, and this member still feels aggrieved, the committee can say, all right, we have a second review process, and we'll send you to stage 2, and they will evaluate it as well. And if they come back with the same answer, it's probably safe to say that it's not a grievance, and you're also showing that when this member does take you on a DFR court case, that you've followed a process and that you've had independent people look at it and it's not arbitrary.
So your overview of the process, make sure you know what your strategies are to get this thing done. Maybe you're just going to file the grievance, and as a group that you told the member, we're not going to take the arbitration because we don't think we can win, but we're going to go as far as we can before we have to spend some money, because let's face it, maybe they'll just settle it before. And so know what that plan is. I'll make sure there's no surprises. You go into some of these, and then all of a sudden you find out, this member also got, they're putting him off for 2 shifts because this is his 3rd rec in 10 years, and I didn't know he was in 2 other ones. Well, that shouldn't, you should know that stuff. This is always business. Don't lose your cool. Generally, just like I said, the other side tends to be more unorganized, and they tend to lose their cool a little more. So remember, it's a business. Act business-like. Don't lose your cool. Always be realistic about your chances, keeping in mind that external resources may be wanting to tell you what you want to hear. So, for example, your attorney might be saying, "Oh yeah, we got good chances on this. That's good." I'm here to tell you, I sat in an arbitration conference. It was a couple years ago, and there was a panel of, I think, 7 arbitrators from across the Midwest on this panel, and they were reading actual cases, police and fire cases, before us. They'd take like 20 minutes, read this case, and then each arbitrator had a red and green light in front of them that they had to side either with the city or with the union. And it was throwing darts. It was crazy. None of them, you think, oh, he's a pro-union guy, or oh, he's a pro-city guy. It has no bearing. They've got their own opinions, whatever, so be realistic about your chances. So you should have a good case to begin with, but keeping in mind that just because you think it's a good case or your attorney thinks it's a good case does not necessarily mean it's a winner. So keep that in mind as well. I've had locals going with slam dunks and get beat, and they're all upset. And I've had other locals go, "Yeah, we're just doing this because it's the right thing to do. No, we're probably not gonna win," and they win. So just keep that in mind. Know where the other side stands. Every meeting I end with, I always, I excuse my member, and I'm always like, "Okay, you just told him you want to fire him, but really, what do you want to do? You're not going to fire him for being late for 3 days. So where are you at?" So kind of know where they're at, and don't be afraid to tell them where you're at. Say, "Hey, 3 days. We're not going to go any more than a written reprimand. It's 3 days. He's had no other discipline. There's no way, So just kind of make sure you know where everybody's at. Don't get personal, like we talked about a little bit ago. Ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions through the process. Have notes, take notes through the whole thing, and make sure you have all your written evidence down. And then at the bottom is always stay united. If you do all this stuff, have the strategy, have the plan, it's really easy to stay united because everybody's informed, everybody's on the same path, we're rowing the boat the same way. You want to make sure you're staying united. So we've only got a couple minutes here, so I want to finish this up. So kind of fly through the rest of here. We got a lot of information. Remember, with grievance arbitration, it's cost. It's going to be costly. There's and you got a time frame to deal with that. And remember, failing to prepare is preparing to fail with anything. So make sure you prepare a ton. It's professional. It's going to look like a court proceeding, very much like that picture there. You're going to have an arbitrator up there, and you're going to have a court reporter or anything like that. It's going to feel very much like a court proceeding because it is. And your rulings versus 312. In 312, the arbitrator can only choose one side or the other. So they have to rule with the union or management. So one side there. In grievance arbitration, they could say, let's say the city wants to fire the person and you want 1 day off. The arbitrator could come back and say, oh, 3 days off is reasonable or whatever. And remember, there's justification there. Make sure the justification for, if justify why you're not doing something to avoid a DFR. Okay, and remember on those 3 things we talked about. So any questions on any of this before we're just getting ready to finish up here? I think we got a couple more slides. Any more questions? All right, here, we'll keep going here and get this thing done. Almost there, I believe. I'll make sure, as a rep, and try to inspire your members. Get them involved. Remember, if you're a union representative, whether it be an e-board member or a steward or just a rep, inspire your members to get involved with the local. Get them to attend meetings, rallies, fundraisings, get them to be politically active. Because again, no one else is doing it. It's up to us. Management's definitely not doing that. It's crazy. They're not getting members involved with stuff. So make sure you inspire them. Fire Pack, we always put in every program. Fire Pack is vitally important to our to what we do. So if you can donate any money to Fire Pack, there are forms on the website. Politics is everything we do, whether it be the state, federal, or local, and it takes money to help push our agenda. So please join and encourage others in your local to join as well. The amount of money you put in, you will get back returned in full. So as we close, make sure you know what your grievance process. We'll go back. This is the big thing. It's like we've talked a lot today about some different things and processes, but know what your stuff is. Go back and get your grievance process out. You should know that intently. Know what your collective bargaining agreement and bylaws state. Understand your members' rights. There's a whole program on that, on Weingart and Garrity and all those. So make sure you know that and check out that webinar. Make sure you're creating solutions and not problems to get things done. And get everybody involved. It's key to be a good rep, and we got to bring up the people underneath us and keep this boat going and keep everybody on the same page. So get people involved. Know how to proceed with a grievance and know what constitutes a grievance, and then most importantly, make sure you all members are represented equally and fairly. That's key. We want to take care of everybody. There's one last poll, and I'll launch that real quick before you leave. There is also a survey at the end, so if you could please do that. But just do you feel like you're better informed now because of this? And this is just a quick one to finish up with, and then if you can please also answer the survey at the end. It's very helpful. Please be as brutally honest in those as possible. This is an hour out of your day. It's important that we cover what we need to and do it in a manner that is best for our members.
Yeah, and I'll also make sure you put comments on the format and everything like that. We're constantly working on better ways to do these webinars, and any comments and feedback we get related to the format and how they're running is important as well.
Perfect. Okay, well, and we hit our mark here, so this is good. It says, do you feel you're better informed? It says, yes, I feel much better prepared, over 50% that, and yes, it was a good refresher. So nobody said no, that it was a waste of time, so that's good. I'm glad that we were able to do that. I think we're just going to hit one more. There's our emails. If you have anything you want to ask us personally or something about the class that you want to get some more information on, feel free to email Andy or myself. Anytime. We do thank you for attending. It's great that you're here, and pass this information on. And if people weren't able to make this in your e-board or one of your reps or anything like that, this will be available shortly on the MPFFU website, so if they can watch it there in the recorded version. Everybody have a great day, and thank you for being here. We got another one coming up at 1 o'clock, a leadership seminar, a leadership webinar. It'll be a quick hour as well. And thanks for your time, and have a great day. Thanks,
yeah, thank
Andy.
you, everybody. Have a great day.
And then, Andy, you got the recording thing there, so you can shut that down.